Like it or not, there are a good number of people out there who did feel the Nitro MTX was a decent mountain sled. Much of that praise centered around its stellar 4-stroke motor. If you're going to ride a 4-stroke mountain sled, this is the motor you'd want under the hood. Unfortunately, there was even more people who really didn't like the Nitro MTX chassis for riding in steep and deep powder or tight tree lines. It was heavy, and its CG was much higher than ideal. Which is why Yamaha's newest mountain sled, the Viper MTX 162, is such a welcome addition to Yamaha's growing Viper lineup. Finally, their admirable 3-cylinder 4-stroke mill we've all come to like so much has found a home inside a mountain chassis where it can live up to its full potential. If there's one thing Yamaha has in spades, it's style. And before I go any further, I just want to take a second to acknowledge how awesome this thing looks sitting on the snow. Even if orange and blue isn't your thing, you got to admit, this is one sexy looking piece of machinery. The number one most important aspect of the Viper MTX is weight. Power to weight ratios are more important in the mountains than anywhere else. At altitude, you start at a horsepower disadvantage and are climbing through deep snow all day long. The Viper MTX is substantially lighter than the Nitro MTX model it replaces. This means it climbs up on top of the snow easier, requires less effort to pull over on its side, and the most important point for a guy like me, it's way easier to dig out when you get it buried. The Viper's 162x26 paddle track is a serious combination of rubber and Kevlar. Lesser power plants would struggle to spin this puppy in really deep conditions, but the Viper's 4-stroke mill, with its fantastic low-end pull and instantaneous throttle response, seems almost unfazed by all that traction. Ergonomically, this chassis is excellent. The steering post is pretty vertical, so the handlebar action is quite flat. If you're coming from another brand, this can take some getting used to, but after a solid day on the trail, you'll feel right at home with it. Running boards are grippy and do a decent job of clearing snow. The seat is a new unit that's narrow but longer than most mountain seats. At first it seems excessively long, but there are some situations where it can be a benefit, and I didn't feel that it got in my way at all. Our Viper MTX is an SE model, which means it comes with a few fancy goodies the others don't, like a cool graphic wrap job, or more notably, a set of genuine Fox Float Evol front shocks. If you're going to have air shocks in your ride, these are the ones to have. It's no secret I'm not a big fan of air shocks on trail sleds, but in the mountains where weight is more important than a plush ride, they do have their place. Evols offer both lightweight and a decent ride, so everyone wins. It's not going to take most of our more attentive viewers very long to notice that this is not your average Viper. This particular unit is sporting a very factory-looking Mountain Performance turbo kit that can be purchased straight out of the Yamaha parts catalog. Claimed horsepower is just over 180, which may not seem overly impressive for a turbo at sea level, but you have to remember, a turbo automatically compensates for thinner air at altitude. So where I rode this sled, at 12,000 feet, it still made about 180 ponies. Where other 800s were struggling with numbers in the 115 to 120 horsepower range, I was still pulling like a banshee. At the end of the day, the question is always the same when you're talking about performance 4-stroke snowmobiles. The question always is, do you notice the extra weight? And in this case, the answer is simple. Yes. It does feel heavier than a similar sled with an 800 2-stroke under the hood. However, its difference is becoming less and less of an issue. This chassis is so good in deep snow, and this motor, especially when boosted, has so much torque, there are many situations you'd be happy to take the extra weight in exchange for all that extra power. In my opinion, the Viper MTX 162 SE represents a very important milestone for Yamaha. It gets them back in the game with a legitimate all-mountain sled whose strengths are not just limited to big bowls or steep chutes. If I was in the market for a new 4-stroke mountain sled, I can't see I'd be looking a whole lot further than a Yamaha Viper MTX.